So today we begin a brand new sermon series, and it's called Living the Jesus Adventure. So if you haven't picked up on that so far in the worship, you're going to hear that a few more times. So to begin that story, I want us to look at the Gospel of Luke. If you would turn to Luke chapter 5, and I'm going to be reading verses 25 through 28. Luke 5, verses 25 through 28. I think that's going to be on the screen. If I could read that off the screen, it might be helpful. Jesus speaking, he said, "Where's your faith?" They were afraid and amazed, and they said to one another, "Who then is this that he commands even the winds and waters to obey him?" Have we got the right passage? That's not the right passage. It's a wonderful story. I love that story. But I'm looking at Luke 5, 25 through 28. So maybe I will read that here. Would you like to hear about that story? I can just forget everything I worked on. Okay. Okay. So here we go. Immediately he stood up before them, took what he had been lying on, right, and went home glorifying God. This is the end of a healing story of the fellow that Jesus heals. I'm giving you that because this is what follows. Amazement seized all of them, and they glorified God, and they were filled with awe, saying, "We have seen strange things today." After this, he went out. Okay, there's been a healing story. People have said, "Wow, we've seen some strange things today." Jesus goes immediately out and he sees a tax collector. The tax collector's name is Levi. Levi is sitting at the tax booth and he said to him, "Follow me." And Levi got up, left everything, and followed Jesus. May God bless the reading and the hearing of God's holy word. We'll get back to the story of the sea another day. Do you remember adventure? I think for some of us, adventure seems to come early in our years, not so much in the later years. Do you remember childhood adventures? Did you have fantasies? Did you have a little group of a little adventure gang like the one in the movie Stand By Me? If you're not familiar with the movie, it's about a little kind of early teenage group of boys. They're heading off on a great adventure. If you had something like that, I had a little gang just like that where we would do adventures. And one of the adventures we chose to do, there were some woods near my house, and we wanted to build an underground fort. We planned, we designed. Every afternoon after school, we got on our bikes and we went out to the woods and we got our shovels. We dug a huge pit in the ground. I mean, this thing was like 10 feet deep. It was about 10 by 10. And then we cut down trees in the woods. We laid it over the top, filled it over with dirt. We had our grand underground fort. Did anybody do something like that? Come on. A few of you did. All right. So if you grew up in my gang, that's the kind of things that we did. And it was fun. It was great being a part of the gang. But when I look back now, what the gang meant to me, it was adventure, but it was also a bit of an escape. Most of you know my history. I grew up in an alcoholic family, so coming home after school and being in that context of sometimes abusive words and actions, not feeling really comfortable, having a place to go and belong and be accepted and also be energized was wonderful. It gave me the ability to break free from a place where I was, kind of a stuckness in that condition growing up, into something new and exciting. So it was quite compelling for me. But I believe adventure is not limited to just an adolescent enterprise like building an underground fort. The Bible is full of stories of adventure. The Bible basically tells us that we're created for this journey of adventure with God. Just look at Genesis, the very nature of how we come to be. Through swirling and whirling, and this world gets formed, and then breath is breathed in, and somehow life springs forward. That's a wonderful story of adventure. Today, when you want adventure, what do? We live in Orlando, right? Pony up the money, head down to Universal, head down to Disney, head down to SeaWorld. We want the thrills, the spills, right? The thrill rides, and we give all that cash over for a momentary rush. I know there's some folks in here. Did you guys ever do the skydiving thing? All the way in the back. Yes, you. I am talking to skydivers. No. So it was a great plan. I was ready for that adventure too, to watch you do it. But people pay money to go skydiving, the free fall, flying untethered from the ground. Doesn't it just, it sounds amazing until you hit with a jerk of reality, right? And your feet touch the ground. And then you got to pay the pilot, right? Then you got to pay for the thrill. What is it in us that creates that desire for adventure? There's something going on. It's clear something in us is longing, drawing us toward some kind of encounter. It's as if there's something in us that wants to be filled, that's longing to be filled. And I think if I narrow it down, especially through a biblical lens, it has something with touching the limits of adventure, the limits of adventure. And I think it's something that's missing today. And I'm going to show you why I think it's missing. Isn't it amazing that as adventure gangs like I had that went out and made underground forts in the woods, it doesn't so much happen anymore. What do kids do for adventure? We've created the adventure through adventure heroes, right? Comics come to life. Heroes like Batman, Iron Man, the Avengers, Spider-Man. You could go on and on and on. We seem to have taken that desire and we've filled it with something that's animated. So we still get a bit of adventure, but it's not real life. And don't get me wrong, I love the movie. I've seen them all. I like them all. They're all good. Especially Kara, they're all good. I'm not criticizing animations. Okay. She knows I'm not big on cartoons, but that's okay. It's entertaining. They are very entertaining, but they all leave us wanting for something more, right? You go into the movie when it's over, I feel like this longing is just a longing for life, and it's something that seems to be embedded deep in our souls, to experience life in its most profound, its most powerful form. And I guess my word to you today is that form we find through Scripture is Jesus Christ. I know it's a cliche, right? But it is true. That form of an adventure life is modeled out and found in Jesus. Some of you got your Real Church magazine in the mail. Did anybody get that today, yesterday, whenever the mail delivers them? Looks like this. Anybody get one? Great. If you're not on our mailing list, I have some of these. They're in the kiosk outside, and you can grab that. So I wrote an article in that, kind of setting the stage for the series, and I talked about how we seek to satiate our need for adventure through activities. We do all kinds of things. I can guarantee if I had enough time, I could get everybody to say what it is. Somebody's involved in some kind of adventure at some level. We like roller coasters at the theme park. Maybe we like mountain climbing. Maybe we like exploring down trails. Maybe we like running marathons. But I think these activities, while in themselves they're great, they're just a tweak. They're tweaking something in us. It's a tease for something more, something deep, something real. And I think Bruce Larson, he's an author. He wrote a book called adventure, taking a great adventure, the edge of adventure, actually. He says, adventure, it's nice, the edge of adventure is nice, but if you only dip a toe in, you're sort of missing it. It's at that very edge is where adventure actually springs to life. And I guess that's what I want you to join me on in this series. A bit of an adventure, a bit of finding where's the edge? Where's the edge? And where do I need to step over just a little bit? There's a difference, I think a big difference between thrill-seeking and a longing for an adventure life. God doesn't invite us into just an hour-and-a-half adventure. It might be great at the movies. It might be great in some particular activity. Might be great in church. God doesn't say, come just have some adventure for an hour here at church. Or if you're Catholic, an hour and a half. Or Anglican, right? Or if you're in Haiti, 2.5 hours. Okay? God says, I have a little bit more for you than you thought. That's why Jesus gives us these words in John 10:10. Jesus says, I came that you might have life and have it abundantly. That's a wonderful passage. I like the way it's translated, or the paraphrase version in the Message. The Message says, I came that you could have more and better life than you ever dreamed of. Now that's compelling. More and better than you've ever, because I have some dreams, but even beyond anything that I can dream of. So I don't know where you are, where you've been, but there's times in my life that I have been a bit bored. Maybe there's some folks out there too. Literally boarded in, locked in, as I felt like in childhood, by life, by a context of life, not knowing how to break out of that. Here's the amazing word. It's right when we find ourselves in that place that Jesus shows up. That's when he shows up and he says, come on. You may be a bit reluctant in this adventure, but I have something even for you that's bigger than you've ever dreamed of. And that's when we come back to the Luke passage. I wanted you to hear that story of Levi being called to the adventure. Levi's an interesting guy. Most of us, we've been to church a long time. You've probably heard a few sermons about good old Levi, the tax collector. But can you imagine though? Imagine Levi. What a tedious, awful, boring job, seated at the tax table, all these folks coming up, and all you're trying to do is work for the Romans, the hated Romans, the occupying Romans, and you get to be a part of extracting heavy taxes from an already broken people, a very poor people. It's kind of like extracting taxes from the people in Haiti. You got nothing, but still you're going to try to pull something out. And here's the clinch. The clincher is, it was his own people. Now, I can imagine even the lure of making money, which is what Levi was doing, by making money, was overwhelmed by Jesus's invitation to join an adventure. If I try to put myself into Levi's position, here's what I imagine. I almost can hear his thoughts. He's saying, here's a chance. Here is finally a chance for me to change this life, this hate magnet life. My own people hate me, and I can go with this guy. Why not? Who knows? He might even do stranger things. So Levi, behind the desk, he's not really fully living a life. He's seated in that desk, and seated behind that desk meant a lot, because desks come in all shapes and sizes. Desk representing that place of stuckness that keeps us from joining into an adventure. When we were in Haiti, we met a fella, and I'm not going to use his name, but we met a fella. He grew up in Haiti, and he got his chance. And everybody who went on the mission trip will know who I'm talking about. He got his chance to break free from the poverty, to break free from being boarded in and not being able to have an adventure, he comes to the States and he sees what we have. And he sees the resources. And he sees, oh, I can get money. And I can have all these things that I've ever dreamed of. And so he gets caught up in the gang life and selling drugs. And he told us this story. And finally, he kind of comes to his senses. And he realizes, I tried an adventure, but I did it in the wrong way. I need to go back. I need to go back to Haiti, because when I was in Haiti, I wasn't distracted by all the temptations. So he goes back to Haiti, and that's where we meet him. Then he's on board with a Jesus adventure, not an adventure of his own that he created. He was able to push away from his desk. His desk was to have the things he dreamed of that weren't so good in the way he went about to get them. And he was able to come back and join in the journey, join in the adventure. Now, I want to stop for a minute, because just in case you think that Jesus doesn't invite you to adventures, I want to give you a little something. I did a little research. I did this a few years ago for something else, but I think it comes into play today. I went and I read all 4 Gospels, and I noted in all 4 Gospels where Jesus' healings took place. Where were the miracles of Jesus? Where did they happen? So did they happen in church, meaning the synagogue? Did they happen in somebody's house? Where did the miracles happen? And I have a little graph here I want to walk you through real quick. Check this out. This is amazing. How many miracles happened in the temple? That's church, folks. 1, right? In somebody's house, 3. Look at this. How many happened out in the country on an adventure? I got a 0.5 there because one of them, it wasn't so clear. So 29.5, right? So let's just call it 30. 30 of the miracles happen out in the country on an adventure. Not many of them happen at home behind a desk. Not many of them happen in the church. Jesus is about travel, moving, and adventure, because the gospel, I hope I can convey to you, the gospel story is adventure. Can you imagine, thanks for that graph, can you imagine traveling with Jesus during those 3.5 years? It would have been a baptism in life. All of those adventures. Jesus did say he came to give us life, and to the full or abundantly or more than we ever dreamed of. But to be a believer, a follower of the giver of life, is to experience the greatest thrill we can while we're able to breathe. And Jesus continued to expand his gang. You know, we think of the gang as the 12 disciples, right? You can go through and list them in your head. He kept calling people to come and be fishers, fishers for a real adventure. But he didn't stop at the 12. In the Hebrews, people would say, we call them disciples, they would call them his Taladim. The Taladim were a group that the rabbi would grab a group of students and spend time and teach them, so the disciples were his Taladim. However, there were many more who traveled with Jesus, and if I polled you, you could probably guess them. Think about Martha, Mary, Lazarus. In Luke 10, Jesus sends 70 of his Taladim out. So there wasn't just 12, there were a many. 70 goes out. They go out to preach and to heal. Joseph of Arimathea was probably among that group of Taladim, and to some extent, even Nicodemus. There are some traditions that show Nicodemus as one of the early, not only supporters of Jesus, but went on to probably follow him in greater ways. So have you experienced any adventures in faith? If we're created for that, and you're not dipping that toe in or finding where that edge to step across is, why not? Have you had an experience like Chad? Chad's just one of several who went with us. When Jesus offers, and here's the clincher, when Jesus says, come, not just follow me, but I want you to go beyond the edge of adventure. I want you to step into it all the way. We hesitate. We hesitate. Why is it that when we get invited to adventures, and it doesn't have to be going to Haiti, adventures come in all shapes and sizes, why do we hesitate? What holds us back? I asked our staff this. You know what they said? Well, I think for Americans, our faith is quite private. It's a one-on-one thing. We keep it to ourselves. So it's kind of hard to break out of that privacy of faith and step into something that kind of exposes us to the greater world. And I can see that. But adventure in itself means moving on, moving out of the box, without always knowing exactly what you're going to find on the other side. And that takes me to the story of Bilbo Baggins. If you are a Hobbit fan, a Tolkien fan, the story of Bilbo is really what I'm talking about. He's a hesitant adventurer. He doesn't really want to go on these adventures. He's afflicted with what I call Hobbit hamstrung hesitation. Right? HHH, not Hubert Humphrey, but Hobbit hamstrung hesitation. Bilbo was a Baggins. Now, Kara has educated me on Baggins. The Baggins is like the traditional family. There are traditional hobbits. They're like very traditional Brits, you know, no adventure, no travels, stay put, stay at your desk, stay in your room, stay in your house. I guess the word Tolkien would say is Bilbo is shire bound. He's bound to his village. He can't break free of that. He's locked into a life of predictability and ordinariness, I guess, even humdrum. Until one day when this happens.
Can I help you?
That remains to be seen. I'm looking for someone to share in an adventure.
An adventure? No, I don't imagine anyone west of Bree would have much interest in adventures. Nasty, disturbing, uncomfortable things. Make you late for dinner. Good morning.
So I don't know if you caught the line. I love this. He says, you won't find anybody wanting adventure in this area. We're plain quiet folk and have no use for adventures. Nasty, disturbing, uncomfortable things make you late for dinner, right? He's hesitant. He doesn't want to go. He's clearly boarded around, bound in that place. He thought his life was pretty good, okay. He was sort of solitary. He didn't need any adventures, and that all changed, didn't it? When he's pressed a bit by Gandalf and a gang of dwarves, this adventure gang he joins. When it comes to living the Jesus adventure life, what's your desk? For Bilbo, it was the Shire. He couldn't leave. For Levi, at first, it's his tax station. So what is it? What is your desk? What is it that's limiting you from stepping out? Do you suffer from Hobbit hesitation when it comes up to the line of adventure, or are you willing to take a step over? If you're not feeling that compelling urge, which eventually got Bilbo, it definitely got Levi to step over into adventure, it's okay. I think it limits us, it limits our lives, it limits what we can do, it limits how we feel about ourselves. But it's okay, because there's equally always an opportunity ongoing. Jesus still invites. He went from 12 to 70, and the number just grows. And his is the greatest adventure in life. It's an adventure that doesn't end. It's real love. We talk about love. This is real love. Limitless adventure, not an hour and a half. It's the heartbeat of life. Someone said it's the family tree that continues to spawn life. That sounds wonderful to me. Why can we say that? Because Jesus, the Son of God, has the power to make it so in your life, in my life. Adrenaline junkies, the thrill seekers, they try to touch the limit of adventure, but it's short-lived. I've already talked about that. They need ever more stimulation, ongoing, ever more. But an adventure in faith with God through Jesus, it's never ending. It's ever exciting, and it's always leading to a deeper reality of love. I want to close with one more short clip. You got to pay attention. It goes quick. We saw Bilbo being invited to the adventure. Let's see the end of his adventure.
I think I'm quite ready for another adventure.
So, are you ready? Are you quite ready for another adventure? If so, you have to come back next week as we go into part 2 of our series.